do we identify stakeholders? In any planning or decision-making process, there's a whole range of people who can or should be involved, can impact or be impacted in a project. I'd like to share a tool with you that I've been using to help groups navigate through the conversations about who stakeholders are in a very concrete way. When we begin a collaborative process, we begin with this graphic as a tool with which to have a conversation. So we begin by asking, who is your planning team? Who is the working group? Who are the people, the core group of people who are going to be responsible for getting this work done and seeing the planning process through? Next, we ask, who are the advisors, the helpers, and the resource experts that you can bring in to help you support the project, who can bring in subject matter expertise or can help guide you along the way? We also ask, who are the implementers, supporters, or funders? Where's the money going to come from? Where are the resources going to come from to make this project happen? And who are the people who hold the purse strings? We ask about both decision makers and opinion leaders, and I'd like to differentiate between decision makers and opinion leaders. So frequently, decision makers are elected officials or people in places of power or influence. Opinion leaders, though, are community leaders who are not necessarily in any sort of position of formal authority. They are the barbers, they are the bankers, they are people who have the ear of the community, but don't necessarily have any formal leadership authority. We also talk about potentially impacted parties, and we talk about real and perceived impacts. So who are the people who are going to be impacted by the project or process that you're working on? Who are the people who think they might be impacted by it? Even if you think they are not going to be impacted by a project, people who think they will be impacted will still have a voice, and they can still torpedo your project, get in the way of getting things done if they feel like they're going to be impacted and you haven't engaged them. We also have a conversation about who are the people who could be engaged in your project or plan or process, but haven't yet been. So frequently, we work with the same suspects all the time. We know who to go to for specific things, we work with the same people, and we leave the same people out. So this question about who should be engaged but hasn't yet been, this is about expanding our thinking. Who else is out there? Who else is interested? Who else could be helpful? Who else might be impacted? Who might we engage differently or better? It's also important to talk about potential opponents. Is there anybody who doesn't like your project? Is there anybody who doesn't want it to happen? Is there anybody who is going to stand in the way of your getting to your ultimate desired outcome? It's so important to figure out who those people might be and engage them early in the process, because that gives you an opportunity to potentially address their interests early in the process, as opposed to getting all the way through a collaborative process only to have somebody find a way to stop your project or your process because they're upset about something that you're doing or something that you're thinking about and they haven't been engaged. The last category is other people who should know about the project. And this tends to be sort of a catch-all category, but you want to make sure that you're not blindsiding anybody who ought to know about what you're up to. And this begins to be the beginning of a community engagement strategy. So we talk about the spectrum of community engagement. On one side, there is informing people, then there's consulting, and then there is cooperating and collaborating. So along that spectrum of public engagement, this tool, the stakeholder analysis, helps us to understand who do we need to inform? Who are the people who need information about what we're doing, what we're planning, what the process is going to be, what we're up to? Once you have a sense of who all the stakeholders are, you'll then be able to begin to develop a strategy for how to engage people in your planning or decision-making process.